Hello everybody, I'm Tad and I'm back. I just wanted to do a quick, I'm calling these my Kickstarter show and tells. I got 2 Kickstarters this past weekend. I did the first video on my unboxing for Nemo's War, and I just wanted to show you the other Kickstarter that I got. It's just an expansion. So let me start off with telling another Tiny Tad story. So when Tiny Tad was living in upstate New York, at that time, his parents didn't really want him reading comic books. They thought they were frivolous, wastes of time, waste of money. And I understand their idea was if you're going to take the time to read something, why not read a book? So, and they wanted to encourage me to read books, which I do. I love books. But I really wanted to, read some comic books. My buddies, all my friends were reading cool comic books. Sometimes I'd sneak over to their houses and read comic books. But the thing was, my father was like, well, read a book or read a newspaper or something that's going to expand your mind. My father's favorite thing was to come home from work at night, sit down in his recliner. My mother would bring him a drink, usually a beer. He preferred Ballantine. I'm sure some of you probably never even heard of Ballantine. Mostly Ballantine, sometimes Jenny, the old Genesee, the Red Eye, Black Label sometimes, but he preferred Ballantine. So anyways, he'd be drinking his beer, and the first thing he always did was sit down and read the newspaper. So what I would do was I would come over and say, hey, let me read the sports page. And he'd be like, my father was a big sports freak. He'd say, well, let me finish it first, And then he'd finish reading it and he'd toss it to me. Here you go. So what I did was on the back of the sports page, they would have, the things like Scrabble or word search or, crosswords, some games like that, but they also would have a couple comic strips. And one of them was the Phantom. So I would, act like I was reading the sports page and flip it over and read the Phantom comic strip. Another cool thing was in the Saturday paper, they would have a whole comic strip section. And that would have, 3 or 4 strips of a story to flesh out the story a little bit more. And the cool thing was that was in color. My father was usually not around on Saturdays, so I would sneak that away and I would read the Phantom. Prince Valiant too. I didn't really read a lot of the funny ones like the Peanuts or Kathy, I think, or Blondie, things like that. I read mostly the Phantom and Prince Valiant. So I became a Phantom fan when I was still little. Anyways, so what am I doing? I'm on Kickstarter. I'm on Kickstarter, probably backing a Kickstarter game. And I had some extra time, so I'm flipping through Kickstarter like you do sometimes, just, looking at all the different things that are available. And I see the Phantom, the card game. I'm like, whoa, holy shit, I didn't even know there was a Phantom, the card game. And I started looking into it, and what it was actually a second Kickstarter. It was a Kickstarter for an expansion. And the expansion is the Phantom the Card Game Terror in Mawitaan Adventure Pack. So this is what they were really focusing on in the Kickstarter. But if you backed this Kickstarter, you could also back it at the level to get the game, which was originally kickstarted a year before that, so about 2 years ago. And it also comes with the Stamus Contra Malum, and this is like a side quest. So not many cards there. But anyways, so you back this, and you could get this as well. So I'll go over it real quick. If you're not familiar with Phantom, the board game, I haven't seen a lot of this, online. I looked up, there's a couple playthroughs and things, most of them a couple years old. But the rules for this game are not bad at all. I mean, what does it have here? It's got, even if you count the back page, which just, you know, has some icons and explains some of the things you know in the game. So that's 15 pages. Now, what is this? If you're not familiar with this, it is a card game, but it's, I would say, like a choose your own adventure. It's an adventure game. So you have the cards and you set them up in a specific order, and then you kind of play through the game like a choose your own adventure. Now, there are some cool things because you can play 2 players. It's mostly a, you know, a solo player game, which I love solo games. You can play it 2 player, kind of like a co-op. 2 of the characters that you can choose from are, of course, the Phantom. And this is the 21st Phantom. So you can play the Phantom, or you can play Diana, his lovely sidekick. Or you can play both, you know, like a co-op. But it's mostly a, you know, a solo game. It's pretty cool. This comes with a nice little bag, Phantom bag, to hold some of the pieces in it. And in the original game, there are 2 or 3, I played through 1 or 2 of them, 3 adventures, choose your own adventures stories. But you can also play it as kind of a campaign. Now, I don't believe they call it a campaign. Excuse me. I think they call it, oh, what do they call it? I think they just call it an adventure or something. Playing an adventure, yeah. So it's kind of like a campaign. So you can play through the different scenarios, basically. And as you go, you can gain loot, which helps you in your next play. There's things like weather. So there's some additional rules if you want to play that way. Some variants. Another thing that you can do, people ask, well, my friends have asked me, you know, what's the replayability? If you've played through the adventure, are you kind of done? Kind of. I mean, you can do a couple different things here. You can play, they give you like different levels. You can play, this says here, so you can play a heroic level, or you can play a mythic level. So just some of the things that happen are stricter. You can play just a basic beginner's level. I like that. So that does make it a little bit more of a replayability to it. It's okay. You can add some different things and keep track of your stats. If you do play the mythic level, you know, like your injuries really can hurt you. I will say that if you have really any experience playing board games, specifically card games of any type, the beginner and moderate levels of play are pretty darn simple. I mean, you really have to screw up a lot to be in danger. But if you play the heroic and even the mythic levels, it does get serious. Your injuries can be more devastating, so it can be more challenging that way. So that's a choice that you can do too. But yeah, really, so you play it as the Phantom, you know, the easy play, and then the moderate play and the mythic play. You can play it as Diana the same way. It changes the story slightly, a little bit. But now, of course, they have the expansion. Now the expansion adds just more cards, really, and it's a whole nother adventure. It's got some additional rules to it. Not a lot. I will say this is about the extent of the rules additions. They have a nice little like newspaper on the back, but not a lot. New rules, toughness. There's a side mission, the story behind the adventure. Components are a little bit different. So there are a couple side missions which are cool in here. I'm not even going to open it up yet. It's just another adventure. And then there is also this, it's called Stamus Contra Malum, and it's another side story, a side mission you can go on. So there's only a couple cards there. So I'm interested in getting into it. So what do I think? Yeah, there's not a lot of replayability for sure. What do I appreciate about it? You really do get into the Phantom world. For me, it's more of the nostalgia of it. It really brings back memories of me, you know, as a kid sitting on the floor, sneaking and reading the comic strip. I even liked the movie when it came out. I've got a couple books. I really like the Phantom and that world. So for me, really, it's just the nostalgia of it. It is fun. It's a solo player game basically, and I like sitting down and playing solo games. I get more games to the table that way. So I'm gonna dive into this, and what I'll do is I'll probably film a playthrough of this specific expansion. There are, like I said, a couple videos out that you can look up that show the basic, you know, adventures that you can play in the original Phantom box. But I'll film, you know, playing through this expansion and, you know, see how it goes. I'm excited to play it. I still think it's worth buying if you are a fan of the Phantom at all. That IP, definitely get it. It is a fun solo game to sit around. It doesn't take too long. Really, the setup is the longest because you have to put the cards in a specific order to tell the story of this adventure that you're going on. So I just wanted to throw that out there, give you a little show and tell of this other Kickstarter that came through for me. I kickstarted this probably only about not quite a year, about 9 or 10 months ago. It did come in a little ahead of time, which was great. They pretty much, I backed it, and in a couple weeks I got the game, the original game, of course, and I've just been waiting for this little expansion to come through. So anyways, that's my quick show and tell for the Phantom, the card game, expansion Kickstarter, Terror in Mawitaan. All right, have a good day. See you later.